Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to your 8th video of this tutorial series. Previously you saw that when I customized logging, I created 3 separate functions. Now instead of extracting them into 3 single functions, we can create a separate function to extract logging logic. This will work, but as you can see the return type is complex and you will have a hard time figuring that out. So we can use proc macro here, just like we did in the last video. Now I created a module called middlewares with 3 submodules: auth, CSP, which will to add content security policy headers, and finally logging. And we already have another single file module with the same name, so we can cut everything from inside this module and paste inside auth middleware, and delete this single file middlewares module, and also update the import in routes.rs file. Declare the macro with custom tracing, and we could have written all these clauses here like on request, on response, but instead create separate functions so we can get IntelliSense and go to routes.rs file and cut all these functions and paste here. Then update the imports. And we also have to make these functions public. And we also have to create make span function which we didn't create previously. And finally go to routes.rs file and delete all these functions and add setup logging macro layer. And if we go ahead and run our app, we get our logging. Now let's go ahead and log the IP address. At this moment we are not logging the IP address. Create a function called getIP. Doesn't have to be public. This will take request object, and let me just import everything. Now get connect info from request extensions and destructure to a variable called adder. Then access the IP and return. And if we don't have any IP, then return unknown. Now inside on request, get the IP and log it. Now before we run our app, we have to call this function on router, which is into make service with connect info. And there is mouthful. And this will let us extract the connect info from request extension. And now if we start our server, we can now see the client IP address. And of course this is localhost because we are making requests from same host. But in production we will see actual IP. So now I don't want you to see my IP when I deploy, therefore I'm going to comment out, but you can get the source code from the link in the video description and you can uncomment and see for yourself. And also remove all unnecessary imports in routes.rs file. If you remember in one of the old video when we cloned the connection pool, I told you that we can use arc here, which is atomic reference counting, and I was wrong about that. I mistakenly thought of sharing reference instead of sharing ownership. And if you read the documentation, they said cloning pool is cheap and it is the preferred way to pass around the connection pool, and therefore it's okay to clone. And I wanted to apologize for giving you misinformation, and I'm sorry. So let's move on. Anyway, let's go ahead and add secure headers. Create a middleware function called secure headers. Then get access to the response and return it. Now let's define a variable to hold CSP values. For now, set the default source directive to self, which means the browser will only allow loading resources from the same origin. So for example, if the website is hosted on mydomain.com, then it will only load resources from mydomain.com and its subdomains. Now the reason I set it to default because I will inspect the browser console and see what CSP needs to be added, then I will add that. Now let's go ahead and insert that CSP value to content security policy header. Then add this middleware to router, add layer, then pass secure headers middleware function. Finally run it. Then check the browser console. And you can see it's complaining about Cloud Pair CDN, which we are using to pull the animation library. So add Cloud Pair CDN to style source. Then also add Google APIs. Then add gstatic to font source. And finally add few more secure headers to response headers. Then you can learn about them easily from this MDM documentation. Alright, I'm going to end this video here. Initially, I thought I would show you how to start background task and manage it and then gracefully shut down. But I'm not getting much view on this series, so I'm going to stop it. Anyway, next video will be on deployment, so don't forget to watch that. Assalamu alaikum.